I would like you to take a brief moment and step out of the noise filling your mind and gently tune in to what your intuition has been trying to communicate to you for quite some time. There is a strong chance that over the past few days, or even just in the last few hours, you have noticed a strange sense of restlessness within you. Maybe it showed up as a pressure in your chest or a random thought that appeared suddenly, tying you to a specific person without any clear reason. You may have sensed that despite the physical distance or the silence that seems obvious on the surface, something deeper is still unfolding. It might feel as though an unseen conversation is happening beneath everything beyond words. This feeling is not simply your imagination. That restlessness you feel is not just anxiety, nor is it a desperate attempt to cling to something from the past. It is the signal of energy moving in your direction. It is not a coincidence that you are experiencing this right now. In the realm of energy and vibration, nothing happens without purpose, and no connection is truly empty. If you have found yourself here in this moment, it is because something within you has been searching for confirmation. A sign that what you have been feeling is real. Your illogical mind may have tried to dismiss it, perhaps out of fear of being disappointed again. But your deeper self recognizes something that cannot be explained so easily. Your soul is sensitive to subtle waves of information, signals that travel faster than any message or call ever could. And those signals are pointing towards something shifting, something that is not as finished or stuck as it once seemed. The path leading you here has not been simple. You have gone through moments filled with uncertainty. You have questioned yourself repeatedly, wondering if it was time to finally let go, questioning whether your patience meant nothing, or if the connection you felt was only something you created in your own mind. That kind of emotional weight can be exhausting, especially when what you see in reality feels like absence. But nothing you have felt has been meaningless. That persistence in your heart, that quiet refusal to fully close the door, is not stubbornness. It is your inner guidance system reminding you that something remains unresolved, that the purpose of this connection has not yet reached its conclusion. What you are picking up on now is the early stage of something beginning to take form in reality. Often, just before something significant begins to shift in the physical world, there is a period of emotional unease. It feels similar to the calm tension before a powerful wave forms in the ocean. That is where you are right now. Something has changed. Where there was once silence, there are now small openings, subtle cracks allowing truth to filter through. Your presence in this person's life has not faded even if there has been distance between you. It has reached a point where it cannot be ignored anymore. It is important to understand that you have not been waiting for someone who does not care. You have not been holding on to someone who has simply forgotten about you or walked away without a second thought. The reality is far more layered and complex. While you have been dealing with doubt, something deeper has been unfolding on the other side of this connection. There has been a quiet transformation happening, one that no one else could see. It has been taking place in the hidden parts of the mind where real change begins. This person is now feeling something they can no longer suppress. The intensity you have been sensing recently is not random. It is because the resistance that once stood strong within them is starting to dissolve. The barriers they built, whether from fear, pride, or confusion, are beginning to collapse under the weight of something they can no longer deny. This shift is not caused by anything external. It is happening because truth has a way of surfacing no matter how deeply it is buried. The connection between you is not something that can be explained purely through logic. It runs deeper than that, rooted in something that time and distance cannot erase. But to truly understand why this shift is happening now, and why what is coming will feel different from the past, it is important to look at what has been happening within this person during the time of silence. There is someone who has been moving very carefully, someone who has kept their distance while still quietly observing. They have been caught between their own fears and a pull toward you that they have tried hard to ignore. During the time apart, they have been living in a way that has drained them. On the outside, they may have appeared composed, even in control. They may have tried to present a version of their life that seemed unaffected, as if everything was continuing normally. They created an image, a kind of mask, not only for others but for themselves as well. It was a way to convince themselves that stepping away was the right decision. But over time that mask has become too heavy to carry. Beneath it, there has been an ongoing struggle that no one else has seen, night after night. They have faced an internal conflict. They tried to resist what they felt. They attempted to justify the distance using logic, searching for reasons to make sense of the separation. They told themselves it was the smarter choice, the safer path. Some of that came from pride, some from fear, and some from a deep discomfort with emotions they did not know how to handle. Sometimes people walk away not because they do not feel something, but because what they feel is too intense for them to manage. Being fully seen can be overwhelming, and for some, it triggers a fear of losing control or causing harm, either to themselves or to someone else. But when two paths are meant to cross in a meaningful way, no amount of mental reasoning can permanently block that connections. Slowly, the defenses they built have started to weaken. They have begun to notice that life without your presence feels dull, lacking depth and meaning. There is a growing awareness within them that they have not been living authentically, as if they have been playing a role that no longer fits. Every time they tried to move forward and create distance, something held them back. It was not something visible, but it was strong enough to redirect their thoughts and bring them back to you repeatedly. This is not just about missing someone. It is something deeper, something that challenges their sense of self. It has become a turning point within them, almost like an awakening. Write 111 in the comments if this message is already connecting deeply with your spirit, and stay with me, because what happens next in this story changes everything. There were moments when they tried to silence these feelings by distracting themselves, surrounding themselves with noise, other people, or anything that could fill the space left behind. But even then, comparisons would arise, thoughts they may never openly admit, but ones that continued to pull them back toward you. All of this has been building beneath the surface, leading to the moment you are beginning to sense now. Something is shifting, and this time it is not something that can easily be pushed away again. Anyone can temporarily distract themselves. Anyone can pretend to move forward for a little while, but eventually the soul reaches a point where it becomes tired of pretending, and that is exactly where this person is now. The life they created to avoid facing their emotions is no longer working the way it once did. At first they believed distance would weaken the connection. They thought silence would eventually erase the emotional intensity between you. They convinced themselves that if enough time passed, the memories would lose their meaning and your presence would slowly fade into the background of their life. But the opposite happened. The more time passed, the clearer everything became. Instead of forgetting you, they started noticing your absence in places they never expected. In the quiet moments before sleep, in ordinary conversations that suddenly felt empty, in crowded rooms where they still somehow felt alone. Even when surrounded by noise, something inside them kept returning to you. And this is where the deeper realization began. They started to understand that what they experienced with you was not ordinary attachment. It was not simply attraction or temporary excitement. It was a connection that touched parts of them no one else ever reached. That realization changed everything. Because once someone understands that a connection is rare, they can no longer treat it casually. The mind may still try to resist, but the heart begins speaking louder than logic ever could. There have been nights where they sat alone replaying conversations you may have forgotten long ago. Small moments that seemed insignificant at the time now carry enormous emotional weight in their memory. The way you looked at them when they were struggling, the way your energy made them feel calm without effort, the way they could exist beside you without constantly pretending to be someone else. That kind of emotional safety is rare, and losing it creates an emptiness that cannot easily be replaced. At first they tried to deny this truth. Pride made them believe they could simply continue forward as if nothing meaningful had happened. But pride cannot survive forever against emotional truth. Eventually something deeper breaks through. And now it has. This person has started seeing the connection differently. They no longer view it as something optional or replaceable. Instead, they are beginning to understand that meeting you changed them permanently. There is also something important happening inside you during this process. Even if you still think about them, even if part of your heart still wonders what could happen next, you are no longer standing in the same emotional place you once were. Something within you has matured through this experience. You have learned how painful it is to constantly chase clarity from someone who is emotionally unavailable. You have learned what it feels like to overextend yourself trying to hold on to a connection alone. And slowly, through all the confusion and silence, you began reclaiming your own energy. That shift matters more than you realize. Because when you stopped forcing outcomes, the energy between you changed completely. There was a time when your thoughts constantly reached toward them. A time when your emotional state depended heavily on whether they responded, whether they noticed you, whether they gave reassurance. But something inside you eventually became tired of waiting, tired of overthinking, tired of carrying the entire emotional weight of the connection by yourself. And so slowly, you released your grip, not because you stopped caring, not because you became cold, but because your soul understood that your peace mattered too. That decision created a powerful energetic shift. When someone is constantly available emotionally, their presence can sometimes be unconsciously taken for granted. But when that energy quietly withdraws and returns inward, the absence becomes impossible to ignore. That is what this person is feeling now. They feel your distance differently because your energy no longer reaches for them in the same desperate way it once did. And instead of making the connection weaker, it made them finally confront what they were losing. This is why they have become more restless recently. Part of them senses that you are changing. Part of them feels that the version of you who endlessly waited is disappearing. And that realization creates urgency inside them. They are beginning to understand that they may not have unlimited time anymore. The strange thing about emotional truth is that it often arrives late. People sometimes only recognize the value of something after they are forced to experience life without it, and that lesson can be painful. This person is now facing the emotional consequences of every moment they delayed, every feeling they ignored, every opportunity they allowed fear to control. And for the first time, they are no longer able to comfortably escape those realizations. There is also another layer to this connection that you need to understand. Sometimes separation is not designed to destroy a bond. Sometimes it exists to expose everything within both people that still needs healing. Distance reveals emotional patterns very clearly. It shows where fear exists. It shows where insecurity exists. It shows where people abandon themselves trying to keep love alive. This time apart has transformed both of you in different ways. It forced you to rediscover your own worth outside of their validation. And it forced them to confront what life actually feels like without your presence in it. That is why the energy feels heavier now. Because something that was once hidden beneath avoidance is now fully surfacing. This person is beginning to realize that they do not simply miss your attention. They miss your energy, your understanding, your emotional depth, your presence, the version of themselves that only existed beside you. And that realization is becoming impossible for them to ignore any longer. Type 222 in the comments if you feel this shift happening already, because the next part goes even deeper into what is unfolding inside their heart right now. And that realization is becoming impossible for them to ignore any longer. What they are experiencing now is not a temporary wave of emotion that disappears after a few difficult nights. It has moved beyond that stage. It has become something constant, something woven into their daily thoughts, whether they try to resist it or not. There are moments when they suddenly stop in the middle of ordinary life because something reminds them of you so strongly that it pulls all of their attention away from the present moment. A song, a scent, a phrase someone says casually. Even certain times of day have started carrying your energy in their mind. At first, these moments frustrated them. They wanted to believe they were fully in control of their emotions. They wanted to believe they could decide when to think about you and when not to. But emotional truth does not operate according to logic. The deeper the connection, the more naturally it rises to the surface on its own. And now they are reaching a point where resisting the connection feels more exhausting than simply admitting what they feel. This is why something inside them is changing so rapidly. The walls they once used to protect themselves are no longer providing safety. Instead, those walls have started to feel like isolation. The silence that once felt necessary now feels heavy. The emotional distance they created no longer gives them peace. It gives them emptiness. That emptiness has forced them into reflection. They have started looking back at the connection from a completely different perspective. They remember moments where you tried to understand them while they stayed emotionally guarded. They remember times when you offered patience while they responded with hesitation. And now those memories carry a different emotional weight, because they can finally see what was truly being offered to them. Real love often feels simple while it is present. But once it is gone, people suddenly realize how rare that simplicity actually was. This person is beginning to understand that your presence gave them something they have struggled to find anywhere else. Not perfection, not fantasy, but emotional depth, authenticity, peace. A feeling of being understood without constantly needing to explain themselves. That kind of connection leaves a permanent imprint on the soul. And the more they search elsewhere, the clearer your importance becomes. There have been nights where they convinced themselves to move on completely, only to find their thoughts returning to you again before the night even ended. There have been moments where they tried to emotionally disconnect, only to feel even more emotionally pulled toward you afterward. It is almost as if every attempt to escape the connection only strengthens their awareness of it. This is because certain emotional bonds are not built only through attraction, they are built through recognition. Something inside them recognized something inside you. And once that kind of recognition happens, it becomes very difficult to erase. But here is what matters most right now. You are no longer in the same emotional position you once occupied. There was a time when you may have abandoned your own peace, trying to hold on to this connection. A time when you constantly searched for signs, answers, reassurance. A time when their silence deeply controlled your emotional state. But something has shifted within you too. You started realizing that love should not require losing yourself. You started understanding that emotional clarity matters. You started recognizing that your value does not decrease simply because someone else struggles to fully recognize it. That realization changed your energy, and whether they fully understand it consciously or not, they can feel that change. They feel that you are no longer emotionally chasing them the way you once did. They feel that your energy has become calmer, more centered, less desperate for answers. And strangely, that is exactly what has intensified their emotional awareness of you. Because when someone stops trying to force love and instead returns to themselves, their energy becomes powerful in a completely different way. You became still, and in that stillness, they were finally forced to hear their own emotions clearly. This is why their internal conflict has become so intense lately. Part of them wants to reach toward you honestly. Part of them still fears vulnerability. Part of them wants certainty before taking emotional risks. But another part knows deep down that waiting longer may cost them something irreplaceable. That tension is growing stronger every day. They may appear normal externally, but internally there is movement happening constantly. Their mind revisits your connection repeatedly. Their emotions no longer allow them to comfortably stay disconnected from the truth. And the truth is becoming very simple now. You matter deeply to them, not superficially, not temporarily, not out of convenience. You matter in a way that disrupted their emotional world permanently. That realization can be terrifying for someone who spent a long time trying to stay emotionally controlled. Because once a person truly accepts how much someone means to them, they must also face the possibility of loss, vulnerability, and emotional exposure. And that is exactly what they are confronting now. For a long time, fear controlled their decisions. Fear of being hurt, fear of losing control, fear of making the wrong choice, fear of opening emotionally too deeply. But eventually fear reaches a limit. At some point, the pain of avoidance becomes heavier than the fear of honesty, and that is the stage they are slowly approaching now. The silence between you is no longer empty for them. It has become emotionally loud. Every day they remain disconnected. The awareness grows stronger. Every attempt to suppress the connection now creates more emotional pressure instead of relief. And this is why you have been sensing such strong energetic shifts recently, because something inside them is preparing for change, not forced change, not impulsive emotion. Real emotional recognition, the kind that changes how a person sees everything. They are beginning to understand that losing you completely would not simply feel like losing a person. It would feel like losing a part of themselves they only discovered through this connection. That realization changes people deeply, and whether they fully show it yet or not. Their heart is moving closer and closer toward a moment where silence no longer feels possible. And the more they try to create emotional distance, the more obvious your absence becomes. This has created a strange emotional contradiction inside them. On one side, they want to protect themselves from vulnerability. On the other side, they cannot stop thinking about reconnecting with you. They replay scenarios in their mind constantly. What would happen if they reached out? Would you respond? Would you still care? Would you reject them? Would it already be too late? These questions have been circling inside them repeatedly. What once felt emotionally avoidable now feels emotionally urgent. There are moments where they almost contact you. Moments where they type messages, stare at your name, imagine hearing your voice again. But fear still interrupts them at the last second. Fear has been their strongest defense mechanism for a very long time. But fear is losing strength now. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly. Every day the emotional truth grows heavier than the protection those walls once gave them. And while all of this unfolds inside them, something important is happening inside you too. You are becoming emotionally clearer. The attachment that once made you anxious is slowly transforming into awareness. You are beginning to understand the difference between forcing an outcome and allowing truth to reveal itself naturally. That shift changes your energy profoundly. You are no longer constantly chasing certainty. You are no longer trying to control every outcome. You are no longer shrinking yourself emotionally waiting for someone else to choose you. Instead, you are slowly returning to yourself, and ironically, that is exactly what strengthens this energetic pull between you. Because authentic energy becomes magnetic when it is no longer desperate. This person can feel that something about you has changed. Even if they cannot explain it logically, they sense it emotionally. They feel that your energy is no longer trapped in waiting. You are becoming more grounded, more peaceful, more emotionally whole. And that realization creates both fear and admiration inside them. Fear because they realize they could truly lose you now. Admiration because they see a strength in you they may not have fully appreciated before. This is why the connection feels so emotionally intense right now. Two internal transformations are happening simultaneously. You are learning how to stand in your own worth without depending entirely on external validation. And they are learning what life feels like when the person who truly understood them is no longer emotionally chasing them. That combination creates enormous emotional clarity. There is also something deeper happening beneath all of this. The connection between you is beginning to move away from illusion and into truth. They feel that your energy is no longer trapped in waiting. You are becoming more grounded, more peaceful, more emotionally whole. And that realization creates both fear and admiration inside them. Fear because they realize they could truly lose you now. Admiration because they see a strength in you they may not have fully appreciated before. This is why the connection feels so emotionally intense right now. Two internal transformations are happening simultaneously. You are learning how to stand in your own worth without depending entirely on external validation. And they are learning what life feels like when the person who truly understood them is no longer emotionally chasing them. That combination creates enormous emotional clarity. There is also something deeper happening beneath all of this. The connection between you is beginning to move away from illusion and into truth. Before, There may have been confusion, mixed signals, emotional imbalance, fear-based reactions, and avoidance. But now something more honest is emerging. They can no longer comfortably hide from their feelings, and you can no longer comfortably abandon yourself trying to hold on to them. That changes the entire dynamic. The old version of this connection cannot survive anymore. Only something more emotionally honest can move forward from here, and that is why this stage feels so important. You may notice strange moments lately where their energy suddenly feels extremely close to you. Times where they enter your thoughts unexpectedly, with unusual intensity. Moments where you feel emotional waves that seem to appear from nowhere. This is happening because emotional focus creates energetic movement. The more they think about you emotionally, the more strongly you feel connected to them intuitively. And right now, their focus on you has become extremely strong. They are reflecting deeply, questioning deeply, feeling deeply. The version of themselves that once tried to stay emotionally detached is beginning to collapse. Because deep down they already know something important. No one else has affected them the way you have. No one else created the same emotional depth, the same recognition, the same sense of being fully seen. That awareness has changed how they view the entire connection. What they once treated as uncertain now feels emotionally significant. What they once avoided now feels impossible to fully escape. What they once questioned now feels increasingly clear, and clarity creates movement. This does not mean everything suddenly becomes perfect overnight. Emotional growth is rarely instant. There are still fears they must confront, still patterns they must understand, still truths they must fully accept. But something essential has already shifted. They are no longer emotionally asleep to this connection. They feel it fully now. And once someone reaches that stage, silence becomes much harder to maintain. You are also reaching a new stage emotionally. You are beginning to realize that your peace matters more than uncertainty, that your worth does not disappear in someone else's confusion, that love should not require endless emotional suffering to prove itself. This understanding is making you stronger, not colder, not emotionally closed, just stronger. And strength rooted in self-respect changes everything. Because now, whatever happens next, you are no longer losing yourself inside the process. That is why this connection feels different now compared to the past. Both of you have changed. The old emotional imbalance cannot continue the same way anymore. Something more honest is trying to emerge through all this silence, reflection, and emotional pressure. And very soon something will need to give. Because emotional truth can only remain buried for so long before it demands expression. Type 444 in the comments if you feel this emotional shift strongly now, because the final part reveals what happens when the truth inside them finally becomes impossible to hold back any longer. Because emotional truth can only remain buried for so long before it demands expression. And that is where this connection is heading now. Something inside them has reached a point where continuing to suppress these feelings no longer feels sustainable. The silence that once protected them has started turning against them. The emotional distance they created to avoid vulnerability now feels heavier than vulnerability itself. That is the final stage before change. For a long time, they believed avoidance would keep them safe. They believed if they stayed emotionally guarded long enough, eventually the connection would weaken and disappear on its own. But instead, every attempt to emotionally disconnect only revealed how deeply rooted this bond actually is. Now they are standing face to face with a truth they cannot easily escape anymore. You changed them, not temporarily, not superficially, permanently. And once someone realizes that another person altered the way they experience love, connection, emotion, and even themselves, life can no longer continue exactly the same way as before. This realization has created a deep emotional awakening inside them. They are beginning to understand that the peace they were searching for never came from running away. It came from emotional honesty, something they resisted for a very long time. There are moments now where they feel incredibly close to reaching out. Moments where the emotional pressure becomes so intense that silence almost breaks completely. They imagine conversations with you in their mind. They replay scenarios over and over again. They think about what they would say if fear no longer controlled them. And slowly, fear is losing its grip. Because there comes a point where losing someone becomes more frightening than emotional vulnerability itself. That is the point they are approaching now. But listen carefully to this part because it matters deeply. Their awakening is not the only important transformation happening here. Yours matters just as much. You have changed too. You are no longer the version of yourself who waited endlessly for reassurance. You are no longer abandoning your own emotional well, trying to keep the connection alive alone. You are no longer defining your value based on someone else's emotional confusion. You have grown through this pain. You have learned how to hold love in your heart without losing yourself inside it. You have learned that silence does not determine your worth. You have learned that genuine love should not constantly leave you questioning your value. And because of that growth, your energy has become calmer, wiser, and far more powerful than before. This is why the connection feels so different now. The old dynamic is ending. The version built on imbalance, fear, uncertainty, and emotional chasing cannot survive anymore. Something more honest is trying to take its place. Whether this person fully steps forward soon or not, one thing is already clear: the connection changed both of you forever. It forced both of you to confront truths that could no longer stay hidden. It forced emotional growth, it forced self-awareness, it forced healing, and those changes are real. Now the universe is slowly bringing everything toward alignment. Not rushed, not forced, but guided by emotional truth. There may still be moments of uncertainty ahead. Moments where patience is required. Moments where emotions feel intense again.